Next on the Go, we're going to explore the difficulty of moving on with life after a horrific and gruesome crime. The interview that we're going to get to contains some fairly graphic moments that could upset some listeners. It's a story connected to the murder of Triffy Wadman 12 years ago. Her murder and then the trial received extensive media coverage.
When police arrived on scene, Trevor Pardee was standing near Triffy Wadman. Pardee had a gun in his hand. On a 911 call, the police can be heard telling him to put it down.
What's that gun down now? What's that gun down now, please?
Pardee didn't. For anywhere from 15 to 17 minutes, Pardee stood near Wadman, and because of the gun, the police couldn't get paramedics to her. Today,
Triffy's boyfriend would be convicted of first-degree murder. Her sister, Sabrina, her father, the entire family, including Triffy's daughter, Tara, slowly moved on with their lives. Then, 11 years later, on the eve of the killing, the first police officer on the scene that night wrote to Sabrina. Constable Krista Fagan's message tried to convey a sense of how important Triffy was to the officer, but the message was the only time the officer ever contacted the family. Sabrina was shocked. She says it was inappropriate, and Fagan's message brought her back to the worst night of her life. Recently, I sat down with Sabrina Wadman in a small room in a quiet house in Placentia. There were dozens of framed pictures of Triffy smiling on the walls around us. Triffy, a young girl, Triffy, a teenager, Triffy, a mom with her daughter, Tara. As a difficult conversation started inside this shrine, it was as if she was watching us.
On October 1st, 2011, my sister Triffy was murdered on Boggy Hall Place in St. John's by an ex-boyfriend, Trevor Pardee. The general consensus of the chief medical examiner was that Triffy's injuries were treatable if she had been given any kind of medical attention from the responders. She could have had basically a chance at life.
What were her injuries?
Triffy was found with a gunshot wound to the chest through the lung. A serious injury, but very treatable, we were told.
What do we know happened in that parking lot?
There was a confrontation between my sister and Trevor Pardee. Gunshot went off. Police arrived. One police officer arrived on scene initially. She would have been the one to take charge then and until others showed up. But in the time frame that she was on scene, my sister led in the street bleeding out. The constable on scene did make attempts to have Mr. Pardee drop the weapon with no avail, so nothing happened. Basically nothing happened. Verbal back and forth, while Triffy bled out in the street for 18 minutes, I was told.
I think that's what came out in the trial, that there was a fairly lengthy time where the officer was talking to Trevor Pardee. There was no exchange of gunfire.
No. Had she been given some kind of attention in those first minutes, Dr. Avis did say there was a possibility. He didn't say that she would have survived it, but he did say that there was a possibility her injuries were treatable. She just needed assistance. 18 minutes of bleeding makes it significant. Like I said, that 18 minutes was her chance. And what did or didn't happen in that 15 to 18 minutes made all the difference. And it cost everything. It cost us everything, and it cost Triffy her life. And that's how I feel.
Now, all this happened 12 years ago, and the reason you wanted to talk with me is that the responding constable that night, Krista Fagan, she tried to get in touch with you via social media. What happened?
On the night of September 30th, it was the eve before the 11th anniversary of the incident and Triffy's death. I received an inbox from Constable Fagan. And I'm kind of, because I'm still a little bit in shock over it, I'm still trying to understand. I'm left with a whole lot of questions, of course, because, I mean, it was completely inappropriate, and I received a message from Constable Fagan expressing condolences, I guess, and I don't even know.
Do you want to read? I know you've got your phone there. Maybe you can call it up, and if you don't mind sharing that, because this is something that you would eventually make a complaint about. So let's deal with what it is that Constable Fagan said to you. There was a complaint I did decide to put in, and it stems from this message. She said, on September 30th at 11:39 p.m., "I'm not family, nor was I a friend. I didn't see her around, nor did I even know her name, but I tried real hard to save her that morning. I've thought of her more times than you would want to know. I've wondered what I could have done to have her still here with Tara. I wonder where she would be right now, as opposed to that fall morning I saw her. I will do my best every darn day to help others in similar situations, but I'll always wonder if I did enough. Could I have done more at that moment? She will always hold a special place in my heart for reasons I will only know. To the beautiful, amazing, strong, charismatic women I've never spoke to." And she has quotations around this part. "Thank you, Triffy, for I am a better person because our paths crossed that morning. I touched you, but you will never know how much you touched me without ever physically doing so. Reenie, my thoughts are with you tonight. Never an October 1st goes by that she's not on my mind, ever. Krista Fagan, RNC Constable." I know you've read and reread that many, many, many times, but do you remember what went through your mind the first time you read that, when you went through those words? I was in complete shock. The first time I read it, quite honestly, was my initial response. So it was I was like completely floored. I was like, what is happening? What am I reading? What is this? She's pouring her heart and soul into it, and I'm not trying to take from her feelings or how she dealt with her stuff from her night, her experience, but that was completely inappropriate to me, and that was my initial was, whoa, I cannot believe what I just read. Signed by an RNC constable. The person who responded to what happened to your sister that night. Yes, she was the lady. She was the first on scene, so she would have, like I said, been giving direction, or in this case, lack thereof. You didn't do anything initially. You waited a while, but eventually you decided to contact the RNC to raise this communication, right? What did you do? For almost 6 months, I sat and I considered what to do about this. I'm not sure if people are aware, but once there's an incident, you have 6 months to file a complaint. It was necessary to be brought to light after the almost 12 years, at risk of sounding a little nasty or mean, which is not what I'm trying to be. This is the last bit of due that I get. This is the only way to hold her accountable. This is for her lack of actions, in my opinion. What do you think Constable Fagan was hoping to achieve by writing you this? Well, I've thought about that a lot. I do feel maybe there's some guilt in there. I do. And maybe a little bit of validation from me, or like I said, some justification, or just some... That part of her note where she says to you that she tried real hard to save your sister, and that she often thinks about what more she could have done to save her. What do you make of that? That's a mouthful. I think that's the biggest. We differ greatly on how that night played out and what should or shouldn't have happened. And I've tried to see some way, but I just don't see what she did. I don't believe, other than verbally, verbal back and forth with Mr. Barty, there was nothing. And while most of that was happening, she was positioned safely behind her vehicle. I'm very unaware as to what she's talking about when she says she attempted to save or help my sister. Because the issue around the story of what happened that night has always been, given the time, the 17 or 18 minutes, should she have tried to shoot the man who had your sister while he was armed and she had been shot?
It's my stance. Obviously, she absolutely should have. She absolutely was in a position to use lethal force to help my sister by any means necessary. He was stood over her with a weapon. She verbally told him to drop the weapon. She, being Constable Fagan, told him to drop the weapon several times or he'd be fired upon. He was warned to drop the weapon or there'd be action. He did not drop the weapon and there was no action. My sister bled in the street. My sister died because she bled out. And she died in the street as per her death certificate. Not at the hospital. She died in the street. Trevi's chance was while she was on the road, not in the ambulance on the way, you know.
Coming back to what you said about it being inappropriate for Constable Fagan, so you submitted a complaint to the RNC. What happened after you submitted the complaint?
I spoke with a sergeant. I was asked what I wanted from the complaint. So I asked for an apology.
So to be clear, what you wanted when you called the RNC was an apology from Constable Fagan for getting in touch with you for whatever reason she did.
Right. Yes, for completely disregarding how I may or may have felt with her thoughts and feelings, and invading my life with her thoughts and feelings. That's the complaint. Yes, for the record, that's exactly what this is about. I had come to terms over the years with how things had played out and how she reinstated that anger and frustration that I had in the beginning. How come nobody saved my sister? How come this happened? How come there was people there that could have saved her? Right? I went through all of that again. I had made significant progress. She initiated this. It does not sit well with me. Someone of Miss Fagan's stature in society can upheaval someone's world like that. It's not right. I'm sorry. Like I said, citizens all around our province are being held accountable for their actions. RNC officers should be held accountable as well.
Where did the complaint go? How was it dealt with?
I went the apology route. My apology was denied. I was actually asked as well if I would accept in writing. And my response to that was, well, if that's all I'm going to get, then I'll take it. Absolutely. I asked for an apology. If I get one, I have to take it, right?
So a written letter from her signed by her?
Right. And again, not even necessarily apologizing for contacting me, but recognizing how it made me feel, what it may have done to me and or my family, and acknowledging that that was wrong. It's not a personal attack. It's not a personal issue. It's a circumstantial. This is what happened, so this is what we need to do. This is the process. So again, getting back to your question, where we are, we couldn't come to that initial reconciliation. The department provides a written investigation to the chief, and the chief then makes a decision. He can accept the complaint and initiate some kind of a disciplinary action, or, I mean, that's a big sort. I'm unfamiliar with a whole lot, but that's the idea. He can agree with it, or he can dismiss it, in which case I can appeal it if I choose. So that's where we are. It's been submitted. We have to wait for word via mail.
So the police chief of the RNC, Pat Roach, this is with him right now?
That's my understanding. I'm sitting in his queue of complaints right now. It can take weeks to months before I hear anything.
I wonder, do you think some people, listening to us would think a crime like this creates many victims? There's no question it's devastating for you and your family. But is there any part of you that has some kind of realization that what Constable Fagan did or did not do that night, she has to live with that, right?
Absolutely. And I feel for her. Like I said, this is not a personal attack on her. It's unfortunate that she was the closest police officer that night. She responded first. We have to deal with the facts. The facts are, she showed up, things played out, my sister died. That's not easy on anybody. I don't expect it to be easy on her. And I hope she's doing what she needs to do for herself to progress in her life. I honestly do. I do not wish ill will on her or anybody. But it is unfortunately what it is. And there is casualties sometimes to trying to do the right thing. And I feel like I'm trying to do the right thing for me. She refused the initial, we could have dealt with this and it was done, right? I feel right now like Constable Fagan owes me an apology.
I appreciate your time. I'm sorry that I had to ask you so many questions about what was obviously the most horrific moment in your life, but I do appreciate your time in bringing this to our attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. I appreciate your time as well. Thank you.
Sabrina Wadman is asking for an apology from RNC Constable Krista Fagan for contacting her 11 years after her sister Triffy was murdered in St. John's. She made a formal complaint to the RNC after Fagan wrote her via Facebook Messenger on the eve of the anniversary of that murder. Now, as a follow to this interview, On The Go contacted the RNC to offer the police force and Constable Fagan a chance to respond. We asked the RNC 3 questions. Does the RNC believe Constable Fagan's behavior was appropriate? Is there a reason Sabrina Wadman hasn't been given an apology? And is Police Chief Pat Roach considering any disciplinary action with respect to Constable Fagan for contacting the family member of someone who was a murder victim? Those are the questions. Here's the response from Constable James Cadigan, who handles media relations and communications. He writes, Anthony, if a member of the public wishes to make a complaint against an RNC officer, they have the option to file a public complaint. The RNC Public Complaints Commissioner provides oversight over the public complaint process. In RNC public complaint proceedings, the complainant is a participant in the process during the investigation up until a decision is rendered by the Office of the Chief of Police. A decision on a public complaint can be appealed by the complainant or the officer who is subject to the complaint to the RNC Public Complaints Commission. And then the statement goes on to say, it is not unusual for RNC officers to make contact with family members of victims of serious crimes in the course of an investigation, as it is one of the duties of RNC officers to assist victims of crime in accordance with Section 81C of the Royal Newfoundland Constabulary Act. The purpose of such contact may be investigative or to provide supports such as victim services or other resources. So that's from the statement from the RNC. Now, I wrote back to suggest the statement does not in any way answer the questions about an apology or the appropriateness of Constable Fagan's actions, or if an apology would be forthcoming, or if Police Chief Pat Roach is in fact considering any kind of disciplinary action. Nor does the statement appear to take into account that Constable Fagan wrote Sabrina Wadman 11 years later. This wasn't part of any investigation. In fact, it was the first time the constable ever contacted Wadman. Constable Cadigan resent me that statement that I just read to you. If you want to comment on this story, you can call our talkback line 576-5207. That's here in the St. John's area, 576-5207. Toll free right across Newfoundland and Labrador, 1-800-1800-465-6846, 1-800